And I don't know. Is this bigger than Activision Blizzard finally getting approved?
I mean, possibly.
I think it is.
Possibly. I think.
Let
Yeah, man. So this dropped right before we recorded, like literally like an hour before we recorded. I was like, oh, okay, here we go. But PlayStation leader Jim Ryan is retiring after 28 years with Sony. This article comes from Emma Roth and Ash Parrish at The Verge. Jim Ryan took over as president and CEO of Sony Interactive in 2019 after starting with Sony Europe in 1994. Jim Ryan, the head of PlayStation and CEO of Sony, is stepping down. In a press release on Wednesday, Sony announced that Ryan will retire in March 2024, while Sony Group Corporation president and chief operating officer Hiroki Totoki will become the interim CEO of Sony starting April 1st, 2024. He said, quote, "After 30 years, I have made the decision to retire from SIE in March of 2024. I've relished the opportunity to have a job I love in a very special company, working with great people and incredible partners," Ryan says in a statement. "But I found it increasingly difficult to reconcile living in Europe and working in North America. I will leave having been privileged to work on products that have touched millions of lives across the world. PlayStation will always be a part of my life, and I feel more optimistic than ever about the future of SIE." Ryan has worked at Sony for 28 years, starting his career in the company's European branch in 1994, where he's held several leadership positions, including the head of global sales and marketing. In 2019, Ryan replaced John Cordera as the president and CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment. During his time at Sony, Ryan most notably oversaw the launch of the PlayStation 5. While supply chain constraints made the console hard to find during and after the COVID pandemic, shipments managed to bounce back. In July, Sony announced that it sold 40 million PS5s. Gosh, dude, I forgot, like, it's been that much already.
They crushed it, dude. They were
Crazy.
killing it.
Yeah. Ryan has been a persistent figure in the battle between Microsoft and FTC over its plans to buy gaming publisher behemoth Activision Blizzard. Earlier this year, comments from Ryan surfaced stating that the acquisition wasn't about console exclusivity, contradicting claims Sony made publicly that the deal could negatively impact Activision Blizzard games appearing on PlayStation consoles. Totoki will become the chairman of Sony Interactive Entertainment in October of 2023, ahead of Ryan's departure. Once appointed interim CEO, Sony says Totoki will work closely with Sony Group Corporation chairman and CEO Kenichiro Yoshida, right, I think, and the management team of SIE to help define the next chapter of PlayStation's future, including the succession of the SIE CEO role. Oh man,
jeez,
it's crazy stuff, dude. It seems like, yeah, I mean, it's interesting too that, it's kind of, he lives in Europe, works in North America. I'm sure that man has been on many flights and is very tired.
Oh gosh, yeah, man. For sure. What
yeah.
I've noticed, like, I never really pay attention to this until maybe since we started doing the podcast regularly and like covering these CEOs, and every single time they always mention their tenure. Like, they're always with the company for a very long time, but then they have maybe like less than 5 years as a CEO.
Yeah.
So that just goes to show like how demanding it can be.
Yeah.
Just traveling, and it's mostly like making appearances everywhere. It'll wear you down if you're a family guy, if you're a little bit older too, It's pretty difficult.
It's a huge time commitment. I mean, I think being a CEO or upper management in any, Fortune 500 company, it's I'm sure it is definitely, probably barely ever have time for family. And Zoom calls probably isn't enough in a lot of cases, right? Like, you can hop on Zoom for like meetings and whatnot, but I mean, there's some things that probably just require the overhead and the overview of like, physical meeting. So I'm sure it's rather difficult. And but in Jim Ryan's defense, I think it's also, he was, at the brunt of the pandemic and the PS5 launch and then supply chain issues. I'm sure it has felt like 20 years the last 5.
That's a good point.
So, I mean, I guess I can't entirely blame him. It's one of those things, but yeah, I mean, if he's, especially if, he wants to spend more time with his family and everything, it's probably the right call.
True.
I mean, he hasn't mentioned anything here. It makes me wonder if he's going to be on like a board of directors or anything. Like, if he's going to have some foot in the door still to a certain extent.
Oh yeah, I mean, I imagine most CEOs usually go into a smaller company and run that one. or they're some type of professional consultant, probably for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
You know, anybody that can call them that's within the company will seek advice, and they can charge for that time to the company. You know,
Right. Yeah. Certainly.
yeah, there's
Yeah.
not very many CEOs out there that can run a multi-billion-dollar, almost basically an industry in a way, because Sony is like
Yeah.
so game changing.
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly a lot of value you could give. I think still. You know,
Hmm.
it's you know, it's yeah, it's unfortunate, I guess, to see the step down, but also too. I mean, I mean, I'm not saying this is a reason to probably step down, but the Sony is going to be, well, they're in the process of entering a very interesting evolution or attempt at one, right? With the cloud gaming and trying to compete with Game Pass and Xbox and
Yeah,
monster
it's
that
not
is
gonna be
that.
easy for them at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be. I have a feeling for Sony, especially, it's going to be a hard like 5 years at least. I'm just kind of trying to get their footing in that and figure out where they kind of stand in the cloud ecosystem. I mean, and with with Ubisoft, getting the cloud rights for Microsoft and that deal, and their kind of outlook on seeing what cloud gaming could be. It's certainly going to be probably Sony's next big focus to try and figure out where they'll how where they're going to provide kind of value in that space and whatnot. So a lot of stuff to be done there, a lot of research, a lot of kind of ideas that need to be scrounged up. But
Yeah.
also, I mean, from a hardware standpoint, I mean, Mike, why are we making a tablet that I need a console for that I can't take with me anywhere? You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of hardware decisions that I think are rather questionable recently. So it's like, I don't know, there's a lot to
Yeah,
figure out.
I agree with that. I wonder if he could be forced into an early retirement, but having 28 years at a company and traveling and all this demand, I think he's just over it, you know? I mean, that's
Yeah,
what his statement basically says. Just like, I love Sony, I love PlayStation, it's a great place to be, but like I gotta move on kind of thing.
yeah,
He's got all the fulfillment he can out of it.
yeah. I mean, ultimately, I'm curious to see what he does next, right? I mean, I think I
Yeah.
mean, if it is a true retirement, then yeah, I mean, I hope he gets to spend time with family, kind of just relax for a little bit, give some insight every now and again, give those words of wisdom. Um, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
oh man, it's a sad day for the Sony people, but
It,
they fight
it
on
is.
to try and get this cloud streaming stuff under control.
Yeah, I think this next CEO appointment is going to be probably the most important decision Sony's made in the last like 10 years. Just because of how far behind they are on cloud gaming, the subscription model in particular, how they've been so heavy on their hardware sales to like survive. Not Sony, but like PlayStation in particular. I think Sony TVs are fantastic, Sony phones, tablets, pretty much all electronics. They even have a HVAC line, fantastic, but their PlayStation line, that entertainment for gamers, I think is lackluster. The best they got is all their controllers are probably the best. I will say is the best first party controllers you can possibly buy. They're fantastic. But I just like you said, like this streaming tablet that I have to be in my home and connected to the Wi-Fi, like what's the point of that? Like come
Yeah,
out with another PSP, come out with better cloud gaming, make your streaming service better. Like
yeah,
they need somebody to come in and like shake things up big time.
for
I
real.
feel like they're
Yeah,
behind, and it's kind of a shame because PlayStation used to be ahead of the curve on everybody for a very long time,
yeah.
and maybe they got complacent or something. Something
I mean,
happened.
this is the thing. We're towards the end of kind of. I feel like we're towards the end of the console era kind of thing. Like we're moving into PCs or moving into streaming, right?
Yeah,
One thing Sony will always have, I think, is that they have the greatest selling console of all time in the PS2. I don't think anyone's
facts.
gonna top that ever. So I mean, that's
Yeah,
But I mean, yeah, and it was. I mean, that was a solid console. It had a huge lifespan. It was ahead of the curve, like you said. So I mean,
yeah,
and so yeah,
but
there was a point where PlayStation was on top, and now they're like falling to the wayside, and they need to kind of catch up and stick with the curve because it's just one of those things.
yeah,
I don't want to see Sony fall behind, but cloud gaming is here,
yeah.
man. It's here.
I think from like a standpoint where we're at right now, they're okay. They're okay.
Yeah,
They're pretty much like with everybody else. But for the future and the decisions that Xbox has been making in particular with their cloud gaming, like they're set for the future for the next 10 years. Especially with their Activision Blizzard acquisition that's going to go through. Their Game Pass model is only going to get bigger. and going to become more valuable to consumers, which are going to entice people to buy it, which makes Microsoft more money. But then when you look at the PlayStation side of things, I just don't see that there yet. You know, it's like Nintendo, I've said multiple times, Nintendo's kind of its own thing. It has its own niche. It kind of rules the whole handheld market, the handheld slash hybrid console, and their IPs are the same ones you've been playing for the last like 40 years. So,
Yep.
you know what you're getting. You're getting Mario, you're getting Link. Like, those two alone, I think, are bigger than the brand of Sony and Xbox. You know, it's like, it's kind of nuts.
Yeah.
But Nintendo's its own niche. But PlayStation, I feel like, they need to catch up and make good decisions in the next couple of years to keep pace with Xbox's model.
They certainly do, man. They certainly do. You got those first party titles, but I mean, and although they're great,
they're fire, absolute fire. You
They're
can't
great,
take
but-
that away from them. But how
I
are you
mean,
really going to try to
it's-
lean on that forever?
I mean, one, you can't, but two, like, comes out on PC eventually. You know, I'm not
True.
as inclined to buy a console if I could just like wait a little bit.
Wait,
I will say
wait
though, dude, I'm
18
like,
months.
I'm a little jealous, and I'm gonna get some FOMO with Spider-Man 2. I ain't gonna lie.
Oh,
Like-
oh, dude, I've already seen the Venom highlights, man. Like,
Like, I'm gonna get some FOMO
Yeah.
there. I'm not gonna lie. Because Spider-Man 1 was it's a fantastic game. I didn't even play Miles Morales, but I mean, I just want to play 2, man. It looks so good.
yeah.
Yeah, man. It's
Well-
sad days. Hopefully, best to Jim Ryan, right? But it's ultimately we have to see how Sony responds, because I think it'll be important.
Yeah, we're definitely going to cover it. I think it's probably going to take them a couple of months to actually choose a CEO. It's not really easy to find one that can run a type of business like this. You got to appease like shareholders and the board of directors. I'm sure Sony has one. I don't know who's on it, but they got to think about things globally and what the future can bring. But we'll see. We'll see.
Yep.
Definitely remodel the Sony PS5, please. I mean, it could look better.
Okay, yeah,
But
dude. Just like, where's the?
it could,
We need the mid-cycle refresh, which I think is coming, right?
yeah, probably. Yeah. Though we've already seen the rumors with the Xbox cloud gaming devices and next Series X or Series S V2 or whatever they're trying to call it. Scarlet, I think. I don't even remember. Covered it last week. But
I don't remember either. I'm gonna be honest.
my brain stopped working. But I'm looking forward to what Sony comes out and they try to do. Maybe we'll finally get my dream come true.
I
I
just
can't
love it,
mention it
dude.
every
I
episode,
I
but you know
love
what
it,
I
dude.
mean.